You're listening to the RE Social Podcast with your hosts, Andrew and Vince from AnVi Invest. For more information, go to AnViInvest.com. This podcast is for entertainment purposes only. It's not to be taken as financial advice.
What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of RE Social Podcast. Today we have one of the legends, Brad Blazar. Welcome to the show, Brad.
Great. Thanks so much, Vince. Wonderful to be here, man.
Thank you. I know I've been following you for a little bit, and your resume is a little crazy. Like it doesn't even make sense. It says that you raised over $2 billion. Is that accurate?
That is accurate. Yeah, through my efforts and the efforts of teams I've organized and led, that is, probably now actually a little less because we still are raising capital technically, but yeah, $2 billion plus.
That is insane. So for people who haven't heard about you, can you give like a 90-second intro about yourself, Brad?
Sure. I've been raising capital now for well over 30 years. It all started when I was in my 20s. I was basically taught the skill by a small oil company until I launched mine and quickly became the CEO of a company I started at the age of 23. And the funny thing is I never drilled an oil well, didn't know the first thing about running a multi-million-dollar business, but I knew I could surround myself with people that did. What I knew how to do was raise money, and have taken that skill and have used it my entire career. I've been the national sales director for some of the country's largest real estate firms that today manage billions of dollars off the platforms I built for them. And so about 2 years ago, I was sitting there realizing, everybody in the world wants more abundance in life. We all want more money. We all want more freedom. And I started asking people what's holding you back from living your dreams? And it wasn't the fear. It was I just don't have the money to get started. And I was like, well, don't you realize all the money you need is around you every day? We call them investors. And I just realized I could be the catalyst to help people's dreams come true. And that's why we launched Capital School. That's why we have students in 16 countries around the world today. And it's just to help people understand the principle of using OPM. Kiyosaki writes about it in the book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, but unfortunately, so few entrepreneurs and so few business owners actually know how to go about and do it the right way.
Wow, that's one hell of an intro. You said something really quickly, but a lot of listeners might have missed it. You said when you were in your 20s, the CEO just happened to just make you a part of this company. You must have had something for him to be interested in you, right?
Well, here I was 21 years old, and I was going to school at the University of Texas. And I was just looking to make some part-time money, man. I started dating, you got to have a little money in your pocket when you're taking girls out on nice dates. So I was just going through the newspaper, circling ads, and called into a company. They were a small oil company looking to hire some closers and salespeople. And so I went in there, and the CEO just took a liking to me. He said, man, you're real sharp on your feet. You dress nicely. You're really confident. And I'm just like a little cocky kid. I'm like, teach me what I need to know. And so he took a chance on me. And, here I was working 12 to 15 hours a week between classes, after school, calling out to California. I was making over 100 grand. And I'm like, what in the hell am I doing going to college to graduate and get a diploma to go to work in corporate America to make maybe 50, 60 grand? I'm making over six figures. And I'm only doing it 12 to 15 hours a week. So I basically, without telling my parents, turned my back to school, quit going to class, and started basically raising capital full time, and went to work for a second business, doing also exactly the same thing. And unfortunately, the owners of that company got out over the end of their skis. They made some mistakes. They got caught. They were basically sued because they were committing fraud. And I resigned immediately when we found out. But all the investors looked at me and said, well, geez, now that this is happening, Brad, what are you going to do? And I'm like, I don't know. They said, well, why don't you do the same thing, but do it honestly? And so I just saw this huge door open, and I said, man, if not now, never. And, I had about 10 grand in my pocket that I'd scrimped up and saved. And I launched an oil company, printed up some business cards, printed up some stationery, and just started getting on the phone, brought in a partner, and started raising money. And we had drilling projects going in Texas, Oklahoma, Louisiana, and did that for well over a decade and built a pretty nice little business for ourselves.
That's awesome, man. I have a couple of follow-up questions to ask you. You know, a lot of our listeners are doing a W-2 job or, just working a regular, 9 to 5. Someone like that, why should they learn how to raise capital? Why does that make sense?
Oh, man. You talk about any business. I don't care what you do. If you get access to investor capital or you just understand how to raise it, it'll help you go further, farther, and faster than you can go on it alone. I mean, let's face it, most people have limited resources, but the big secret is really understanding that if you know how to attract and raise money, you can do big things in life. You can buy a small property and flip it and split the profits with an investor and make on a flip maybe more than you make all year. I talk to wholesalers and rehabbers, and they're doing deals and they're making 40, 60 grand a flip. I mean, that's life-changing money for a lot of people, man. Pay your bills, put a little bit of money in the bank. The key really is, it's my belief that people need to create multiple streams of income. I call it mailbox money, because most people in the world are exchanging time for money. That's not a way to live. I want freedom. I want to be able to do what the hell I want to do when I want to do it with whom I choose to do it with. And so I've created this lifestyle, both with my online business, with some coaching, with the real estate portfolio, where I don't have to exchange my time for money any longer. And that's what I want to teach people. It's what Kiyosaki was trying to teach people. Invest in assets. Your liabilities become your assets. They become money generators. They become tax deductions. And so, the key with OPM and learning how to basically work with investors is you can just do bigger deals. You can capitalize a business that maybe you've been thinking about starting. Maybe you want to open a restaurant. Get some investors. Maybe you have a B2B idea. You want to do some e-commerce, buy a business on Amazon. Again, investors. So it's really just this principle and this concept, Vince, of understanding if you're held back from what it is you want to do due to a lack of capital, that should no longer be an excuse.
Wow, that's a really nice way to put it. I have, obviously, I write down what you're saying, and I'll ask follow-up questions. So that kind of is my style. So if you do, there's two ways we can go from here, right? So you could either be the guy who raises capital for somebody, some business. That could be your thing, like you and Hunter Thompson, you guys specialize like that. Now, so do you also, you have to have something to attract the investors to give you the money. So how do you do that? Do you also build that?
Well, it really depends. For example, I'm a real estate entrepreneur. So we invest in real estate. I've been doing it since 2005, 2006. I got started in single family like a lot of people today. It's mostly self-storage and also some multifamily. And we're starting to get into some short-term rentals. But it's what I call having a really good elevator pitch. You see, the problem that most people have is they've never sat down and they've never devised an elevator pitch. So the question I would have for your listeners is, what is the purpose of your elevator pitch? Most people think it's to tell people what I do for a living. So imagine you're at a networking event or you're at a social gathering and someone comes up and they say, hey, Vince, great to meet you. Tell me about yourself. What is it you do for a living? You tell them, I'm an attorney, I'm a CPA, I'm in sales, whatever. Biggest mistake you could ever make is telling people what you do. Because if they already have a relationship with someone that does what you do, there's no interest in going deeper or going further with you. It's like, I already got an attorney, already got a CPA, already got somebody in my life that does exactly what it is you do. So I sat down a couple of years ago, realizing that my elevator pitch was really that little worm on the hook to inspire people to go deeper with me, like to want to spend time with me. And so now my elevator pitch, when people ask me what I do, is I smile and I say, I'm a freedom consultant. And they look at me like a deer in the headlights because they've never heard anybody on planet Earth tell them that they're a freedom consultant. And then I just smile and I say, Joe, you're probably wondering what a freedom consultant does, right? And they're like, yeah, I'd like to know. And I say, well, I'm a real estate entrepreneur. And what I do is I help people learn how to invest in real estate passively so they can basically get away from exchanging their time for money. A matter of fact, I'm doing a webinar next week on that very subject. Might that be something you'd have an interest in? Yeah, sure. I'll send you the link. And before you know it, they're now working with me. I'm now following up with them. Why? Because everybody in the world, man, wants more freedom. So that's my elevator pitch. I'm a freedom consultant. This is what I do.
I'm going to steal that, Brad. I'm going to use that.
Trust me, I've got students in multiple countries around the world, Vince, that have basically used that, and they say it is amazing. When they go to networking events, they use that or something very similar, and they say it's absolutely magical.
And then when they want to know more, you have like a deck? Like, do you have something set up?
Well, here's the thing that I understand about raising capital. This is very important. Some of the other top business coaches like Cardone, my good friend, Coach Michael Burke, understand this. Money follows motion. You have to constantly be moving forward in a process with people. So think of it this way. I do a lot of events. We do boot camps, we do webinars, we raise money through webinars, also live events. So when I talk to somebody, I'm able to move them to an event. You know, hey, next week I'm doing a free webinar. Would you like me to send you a link? Or, hey, I'm doing a gathering. I'm doing a networking event. Would you like to join us? It's going to be, you know, some appetizers, some wine, etc. So I'm always moving people forward in that process. Most people do not understand that concept. And that's why most people are unsuccessful, either raising money, or if they're doing it, they're struggling and they're floundering and they throw their arms up in despair and they just basically give up. Raising money is actually fun. And more importantly, it's simple once you understand some key concepts, some key principles. I think what sets me apart from most of the other coaches, whether it's Bridger or Hunter or Neil, is I've simplified and I've codified how to go about this. I talk about things like the validation phrase. What is that? It's how you validate trust within another person. The 4-step blueprint, which is a set of 4 steps or 4 calls with a prospective investor. The trust sequence, how you go about building trust inside of another person, because nobody's going to invest with you until they trust you. Once my student or the person I'm working with understands these things, it's game over. It's a matter now just showing up, going to work, talking to people, and hearing the sound of money hitting your bank account. But if you don't understand this, you make a lot of the rookie mistakes. You do a lot of things the wrong way, and then you just say, man, I don't know why I'm not closing people. Well, what's going on? Well, I'm pitching. Well, you're probably pitching too prematurely before there's trust. You see, they're asking you to send you the deck because that's the next step in the process. But when you try to ask them to write a check, they're very evasive. Why? Because they don't trust you enough. Slow down, build trust, get to know people, allow them to get to know you, and use the framework and some of the tools we make available to you so that you can correct what you're doing and start having success. That's what it's all about. It's really teaching people how to go about the process of building trust, slowing down, teaching them what they need. You need a good presentation, good pitch deck. You need a good story to tell. And, once you have those, what I call recipes for success, everything just falls right into place.
So can we go over some of the stuff? So is validation phrase, is that the first thing that you do? Is that qualifying a potential investor?
To some degree, yes, Vince, but here's really the magic. I tell my students, you're wasting your time pitching your deal, talking about the investment, talking about whatever it is you're going to try to raise capital for until you know that person trusts you to go forward to the next step. If you're going to pitch them, they're going to say, well, yeah, send me the stuff. I'll take a look at it. And then they're never going to invest with you. So what the validation phrase really is, it is a way for them to validate they trust you enough to move forward to the next step in the process. It is a subconscious, psychological, psychiatrists have studied the way the mind works, and it does use some psychology in this. But basically, at the end of my second meeting with somebody, after I've got to know them, they've got to know me, I've disarmed them, I've told them all along, right now, Vince, I just don't have anything that I can talk to you about from an investment perspective. I get to the very end of my second meeting and I say, Vince, once again, like I've been telling you, I right now just do not have an investment that I can really openly discuss. And here's the reason. I like to give all my existing investors the right of first refusal on most of my new projects. And as a result, they tend to fill up pretty quickly. But here's what I'd like to do with you, Vince. I sense you're interested. I keep a list of people on my desk. I'd like to add you to that list and give you a call back if I'm working on a project or have a small opening on something I think you can get real excited about. Would that be okay with you?
Yeah.
When they say yes, what they've said is, yeah, I'm ready to now have you pitch me, brother. So you see the magic in that? They're inviting you by saying, I trust you enough now to move to that next step. They're not saying it that way. It is a subconscious implied consent that, yeah, I trust you now. Let's talk about doing something together. So when you use that as what we call the validation phrase, well, what do you think you're going to do next week? You're going to put a little note in your CRM, Vince confirmed, call back. And then I call you. And after I warm you up for a couple of minutes, I say the purpose of the call, Vince, is I'm working on a big deal. Got a big property down in Naples, Florida. It's 2 blocks from the beach, 250 units, beautiful, Class A. I think it's something you can get real excited about. You have about 5 to 7 minutes, and I can just touch on some of the highlights. Yeah. And then I pitch. And I'm like, would you like me to send you the PPM and the pitch deck? Yeah. And then I follow up. And on the 4th call, I close. And so that is the sequence of events that I call the 4-step blueprint. Introduction, follow-up, validation phrase. Then you go to the pitch, and then you go to the close. And if you rinse and repeat that process, it allows you to understand the purpose of every meeting with somebody or every call. See, now on the 2nd call, I'm trying to do this. On the 3rd call, I can pitch. On the 4th call, I'm closing, I'm answering questions. And so it's like a set of railroad tracks that gives the person raising money the knowledge and skills they need to know what they need to be doing in every meeting or on every call or on every Zoom with a potential investor. And that's something that most people don't know. They just, first call, hey, calling to see if you have an interest in investing in this great deal we're working on, or they do it on the 2nd call, but they're doing it too early. They're not validating that other person they're communicating with has a level of trust to physically write a check and go to that next step in the journey with them.
So the 4 steps of blueprint is you do the intro call. You don't even talk about the deal, even if you have one.
Hell no. That's the worst thing you can do. You might say, I'm a real estate investor. I'm an entrepreneur. I invest passively right now. I always disarm people. I say, right now, put away your checkbook. I don't have anything to talk to you about from an investment perspective. And here's why. Mm-hmm. Because my deals fill up real quickly. I mean, I offer them to my initial investors first on a first come, first served basis. It's very rare that I have an allocation or something for a new person to come in. When I do, would you like me to call you? But that doesn't happen until the end of the 2nd call. I want to make sure that that person knows me and I know them for 2 reasons. Number one, I take the role of a fiduciary very seriously. And I tell them, I'm going to ask you a lot of questions because I really want to know where you are, where you want to be, if this is a suitable investment. Vince, are you okay with me asking you questions so I can get to know you better?
Yes.
Yes, great. You're probably going to have a lot of questions for me, Vince, like, my prior performance, what it is we do, who's on my team. And I guarantee I'll answer all of those questions for you. When we're done, over the course of our conversation, one of 2 things will be really evident. Number one is you'll just realize this investment's too risky or it's just not for you. Are you comfortable telling me that this is not something that you're interested in? Yes. Or you'll realize it is an investment that you want to know more about. You want to learn what the next steps are. Are you okay? Tell me that, because I don't want maybes. I'm not in the business of getting a maybe. I want a yes or a no, because a yes or no for me is a hell of a lot better than a maybe. I don't want to be chasing people. And so I give them the permission to say no right up front. Mm-hmm. You see, there's psychology in that, because when you offer the ability to people to say no, they usually don't. They're like, oh yeah, I'm interested. And so you move them forward. The same thing when I close. I always tell people, how much would you like to invest in the offering today, Vince? 1 unit, 2 units, 3 units, or no units? Mm-hmm. Well, how much units again? And so I tell them it's $50,000. Are you okay with that? Yep, great. Let's make out the paperwork. We'll get you onboarded. And it's a process, but it's also understanding a little bit of what I call some sales psychology, because at the end of the day, you are selling. You're selling yourself, you're selling the program, the opportunity, the fund, whatever it is you're talking about to that person. And then once you close an investor, it's just a matter of rinsing and repeating that multiple times to hit the target of whatever your target raise might be. You know, you're raising $1.5 million, or do you have a fund where you're trying to raise $10 million and fully subscribe to fund? But it's all the same process.
That is insane. So it's very nice. You know, you sold me. What do you say? You know,
get out your checkbook. You can invest in our fund.
Yeah, let's invest in it. So I had so that would be the 4-step process, the blueprint that you do, and then the second call you follow up. You at the end of the second call you talk a little bit, and then you might introduce them to maybe a possibility or an opportunity, right?
That's it. That's correct. You got it. Yep.
Okay. And then the third call is the validation to see if it is of interest, and then you pitch them the idea or the pitch deck.
So the validation phrase is how I close the second call or the second meeting.
Okay. So you
then
add it
the
up.
pitch, which is I'm now pitching the deal. That's the third call.
Okay.
I know that they want me to put on the list. I'm calling you back because I have an opening. I'm working on a deal. So the third call is I'm pitching. Then at the end of the third call, I say, would you like me to send you the package to take a look at so that you can sink your teeth into it and do your due diligence? And then the fourth call, about a week later, I'm calling to answer questions related to that investment or that deal, and then I close them. How much would you like to invest? Is this something that is appealing to you?
Yeah, that's really cool, man.
So really, it's 4 calls, you know, and the great thing about that is each call is spaced about a week apart. And so if you think about that, you can take somebody that has no idea who you are, that doesn't know you, that is a new person, a new relationship, and inside of a month, have them writing you a check for $100,000, $200,000, because it is a 4-step process. It is an introductory call, a follow-up call to go deeper, a pitch call, and then a close. And that's the 4-step blueprint that I talk about, that we have codified as one of the principles or one of the foundational building blocks that all of my students around the world understand and know, so that it corrects the mistakes they make where they've been trying to pitch maybe on the first call or maybe on the second call. And that's why they're getting no's. That's why the investors are talking to are very evasive and very non-committal. It's not that it's a bad deal or that you're a bad person. It's just that they don't trust you. That's it, plain and simple.
That is very good. I wanted to move on and ask you some other super interesting topics you're talking about. One is, where are you finding these leads? Are you starting a meetup? Are you on the park bench? You know, like, how is that happening? I did listen to the episode with Nico, and I was blown away by your coffee shop idea. I was like, what is that? I was like,
dude,
this is
you're
genius.
getting in the richest houses in your city. Why? Because there is a coffee shop that caters to all those multimillionaires. And when you buy them a cup of coffee for $5, there is a sense of obligation. They're willing to give you their time. It's just one of the many ideas, but you know, that's one. Number 2 is, you know, social media. With the Reg D offering, you can advertise. So we create a lot of ads. We drive people's attention to register for things like webinars or free ebooks. So that's another technique. You can buy lists of high net worth accredited households and do a mailing and invite them to an event that you might host. Now, we use multiple methods. We're fishing, as I say, in multiple ponds. But you got to realize, man, there are investors around you every day. Most people are just not tuned into that. They don't have an elevator pitch. They don't know how to approach people. You know, for example, if I pull up to a store and I see a guy pull up next to me and he's in a nice car, Bentley, a Porsche or whatever, I ask him, hey, you know, beautiful car, man, I'm a collector as well. What is it you do for a living? And they tell me, oh, I'm a partner in a law firm, or I'm a business owner. Oh, great, man, I'm a freedom consultant. And all of a sudden, man, boom, I'm like, well, yeah, would you like to learn how to have more freedom in your life, how to quit exchanging your time for money? Yeah. And before you know it, I'm getting a business card, I'm giving him mine, and we start building a relationship. So it's just teaching people how to, number one, approach others, but to get over the limiting beliefs and the fear that you're going to get punched in your face, because you're not. But see, most people are held back because of that limiting belief. They're like, I'm below that person's standard. Here's that dude with a nice Rolex watch pulling up in a $250,000 car, and I'm driving my Toyota. Why can you not talk to that person? When I started my oil company, I certainly wasn't driving around in a Benz or a Bentley. I was a college student. I was broke, but I was confident. I knew what I wanted in life. I had a goal, and I was willing to get on the phone and have conversations with people and challenge people and rough them up a little bit when I was closing them to get them to commit. See, when you're closing, you're trying to get people to decide. And here's the funny thing. The word decide means to kill off. Think about it. Insecticide, pesticide. It is the root word to kill off something. When you help someone make a decision, you're helping them kill off the indecision. See, big time people are unwavering. They commit, they know what they want, and they just move forward. So part of closing an investor is to get them to decide. It's getting them to commit. And a lot of times when you're trying to close an investor, they're apprehensive. Maybe they've never invested in something like you're doing before. This is the first time. So it is analogous to a little kid that climbs up the ladder to a high dive. He crawls out to the end of the high dive and he looks down. He goes, holy crap, it's a lot higher than I thought it was. And then he looks back and there's a long line of kids all the way down to the pool. And he's like, I can't ask them all to climb down the ladder because then I look like a wimp. And he jumps and he realizes, oh, that was fun. I didn't kill myself. And he does it again and again. Investors sometimes need what I call that little push, that little nudge. Hey, man, I get it. You're apprehensive. And when I was in the oil business, I had this very wealthy doctor and I knew he was rich. And I just said one night, probably about 6:37, I was calling out to California. And I said, Dr. Schnackman, I'm just going to be totally honest. It just takes two things to invest in an oil well. He said, what? I said, big balls and lots of money, dude. Which of the two don't you have? And I was a 24-year-old kid, and I literally bit my tongue, and it seemed like forever. And he said, tell me again how much 3 units in your program cost. I said, it's a check for $150,000. Is that something you're comfortable with? He said, yeah, I can do that. See, that little challenges manhood, but it also convinced him, I got to do this, man. And most people are not cocky and confident like that. But that one comment got me a $150,000 check that day, but it also got me millions of dollars from him as I was able to gain his trust and show him that we were stewards of his capital and he was getting income from the wells. So, that's sometimes what I call creating positive tension. It's getting people to move forward in a process because your job is to get them to decide, to kill off that indecision. Either you're going to invest or you're not. The attitude you have to have in this business with the activity you create is, look, Vince, some will, some won't. So what? I got someone else I can be talking to. So are we going to do this or are we not?
Nice, man. I really like that. And how did you meet this doctor? Did you have a relationship with him before? Or you just cold calling people?
He was cold call, strictly a cold call off a list. Mm-hmm.
And that was your first call?
No, that was actually my fourth call. I was trying to call him, talk to him. I built a relationship. He flew out to meet us on his private jet. He had a jet, so I knew he was loaded. And, he went home and I sent him all the stuff and he was just very non-committal. And I said to myself on the fourth or fifth call, if I don't close him, man, I'm never going to close him. And I said, I just got to be a little rough. And I just said, look, man, it takes two things, either balls, because we might drill a dry hole and you'll get a nice tax deduction, but you won't get a return on investment, or, it just takes money.
Wow.
He moved forward in the process. So, I've got lots of students that have used that close and they've raised lots of money, just like with the the coffee shop idea. So
Yeah.
it's really, where you find investors is you can buy lists, you can create networking events, you can go to meetups, you can meet them almost anywhere. It's just really having that hook and having something to move them to. Social media, obviously now with the Reg D 506C, you can advertise as long as the investors at the end of the day are accredited. So it's multiple methods. I tell people, man, you want to have a couple of different ways to attract attention, and then just have a really good, robust system. I recommend a nice CRM system to create the reminder tasks for yourself, so that, you had a first call. Great. Well, you need to remind yourself to call that person back about a week to 10 days later. Well, why is that important? Because if you don't, that opportunity to get money out of that person is going to fall through the cracks. If you're not tracking your progress with each prospect, those conversations are just falling through the cracks. And now you're on a treadmill of unproductive activity that ultimately is just not taking you anywhere. And we got a lot of people that's what they do. They talk to a guy worth $5 million and they never follow up. And then they realize, oh shit, 2 weeks go by and I forgot to call them back. And by that time, the guy's already lost interest.
What CRM system do you recommend for
I mean, there's so many out there. I've used Salesforce. I've used Act. Right now in our business, we use Pipedrive, which is pretty good. Really, the whole purpose of a CRM is just to have really good notes, just to keep people's contact information, and also to create the tasks and the reminders for you as the capital raiser, so that hey, this is the third call with Vince. Here's the notes on the first two. And, here's what I've learned. He does this for a living. He has 3 kids. He's lived in Miami for the last 22 years. Or, you profile people because you want to know about them. See, if you're ever challenged, right? Bad things happen to good people. If you're ever challenged by who? The regulators, or something goes astray and you're now having to defend yourself in arbitration, where that prosecutor says, well, how did you know that Vince was a suitable investor for your deal? Well, let me get out my notes. Number one, the guy makes about $300,000 a year as a business owner. He's an accredited investor. He's lived in his house, which is valued at $1.2 million for the last 4 years. I mean, you learn about your investors as you build that relationship. It's called the KYC, know your client rules. That's part of the securities industry. Because we don't want to take people's money if it's an unsuitable investment. I can't tell you how many times in my career I have turned people away. They're in their late 60s or 70s. They want to invest. I'm like, no, not going to take your money. As much as you want to do it, not going to take it. It's not a suitable investment for it. I don't want you calling me every month saying, hey, how are we doing? If you're going to get stressed out, this ain't the right deal for you.
Mm-hmm. Hey, Brad, real quick, for people who haven't listened to the Nico's episode, can you ask to our listeners about the coffee shop, how that works?
So many years ago, I was actually raising money for a very large real estate syndication firm, and we had built distribution with broker dealers and financial advisors and intermediaries, where we were just sitting back and, man, they were just sending us checks every month. And one of the advisors was fairly new. And he said, man, I'm really struggling. I just don't know how to build my business, get in front of rich people. Can you help me? And I'm like, well, yeah. I'm like, what is your perfect client? He's like, people with money. And I'm like, okay, well. And I just said, well, what's the richest part of town? River Oaks. Is there a Starbucks there? Yeah. I'm like, I bet you that's where the Bentleys and the Rolls and the Ferraris and the Porsches are showing up every morning as these people are getting their cup of coffee on the way to work. Why don't we show up there? He's like, great. So we showed up and we went up to the cash register. He ordered a cappuccino and I ordered a latte and some pastries. And I gave the lady, I said, here's my American Express. I said, we're going to go sit over here in the corner and watch us as we go, because I'm going to wave to you in a second. And when I wave, you tell the next person in line that the order, whatever it is they want, it's free today. And it's compliments of the 2 guys over there. And you just point like this, you point to us. And so, we sat down and I kind of waved, and some guy got up there all dressed in a nice suit and he ordered whatever, I don't know. And she said, oh, it's free today, sir. It's compliments of the 2 gentlemen right over there. And curiosity kills the cat. Everybody's curious, like, what's going on? Am I on candy camera? So when the person looks over, I just kind of nod, they're curious. They walk over and I say, hey, my name's Brad and this is my friend Vince. Vince is a very successful advisor. He helps people lower their taxes with their investments. And, we kind of get upset and beat up a little bit when people try to call us at 7, 8 o'clock at night and we're trying to enjoy time with our kids. And so we thought a much easier, less evasive approach would just treat you to a cup of coffee on the way to your office to work today. Would you have an interest in visiting with Vince and learning more about how he might be able to help you? Sure. And we literally walked out of there with a stack of business cards, CEOs, people that were partners in law firms making $400,000, $600,000 a year, business owners, entrepreneurs. The follow-up on that was magical because all he had to do was tell people, I was the dude that bought you the cup of coffee the other. Oh yeah, I remember you. That was so cool, man. Like what a great idea that was. How did that work out for you? And before that, he's raising millions of dollars.
How many people do come to your desk after they get the coffee?
Pretty much everybody was receptive to at least giving us their business card. Wow. And it's the sense of reciprocity. You've done something for me. It's now my time to do something for you, at least give you, the 10 to 15 minutes that you're trying to get. What I've learned about business, because I've been on stage, I've shared the stage with many of the greatest speakers, people like boxing legend Floyd Mayweather, Shark Tank's Kevin Harrington, Jesse Itzler, Brandon Dawson. Is in any relationship, you want to add value first before you ask. Mm-hmm. So the value is bought you a cup of coffee and a pastry, dude, on the way to work. What is the ask? Do you want to spend 15 to 20 minutes with me to see how I can help you? And the sense of reciprocity says, yeah. So it's a magical thing, but that coffee shop idea is just one of many ideas. Another great idea is there's a magazine company called Reminder Media. And Reminder Media started as a business really for real estate entrepreneurs, real estate agents, because the biggest challenge a real estate agent has in building their business is they have to stay present. They have to stay in front of their people so that when a person is ready to buy or list, they think of you first. So what this company does, and they do a great job, I'll actually get a copy of this, is they create a beautiful magazine that basically goes out. And you can see right here on the front cover, what they do is they put your picture and you send this out to all your prospects and it says compliments of Brad Blazar. And so every other month, it's a bi-monthly, all of the people that I'm dripping on get a beautiful magazine. It says compliments of Brad Blazar. We get calls at our office. But think about this. If I have a magazine that's got my name and a picture of me and my contact information, and I'm trying to raise capital, why don't I order 100 more? They only cost like $3, and then go to the Rolls Royce dealership and put half a dozen in the waiting room when people are getting their vehicle service. Go to the most expensive, highest end restaurant in town and put some there so when people are waiting on a table, there's my name and there's my magazine. Go to the Porsche dealership, go to my country club and put some there in the pro shop. You see, I'm branding myself within my community because when people see me, they're like, I've seen you somewhere, dude. I don't know where. Maybe it's on that magazine. Oh yeah, yeah. Before I know it, you see, they're talking to me. But I've also got calls where they just pick up the magazine and they call my office and they say, hey, dude, I got your magazine the other day at the Rolls Royce dealership. Like, what do y'all do? It's a natural curiosity. And to send out these magazines every 60 days cost me $250, and we send them out to 100 people. But it's that what I call intentional effort, Vince, because like John Maxwell says, and he's one of the most acclaimed authors in the world, he said, look, to be successful, you have to be intentional. The problem most people have is they sit back and they take whatever life throws their way. I show up at work today, whatever life throws my way, I'm just going to get it in my lap. He said, big time people have goals. They're reviewing their goals on a daily or weekly basis. They're moving forward. There's intention in their efforts and actions. Well, if you're going to raise money, guess what? You got to be intentional. Money just doesn't show up in a wheelbarrow at your front door by sitting back and hope it works. You got to pick up the phone. You got to be in meetings. You got to be having conversations. Well, if you do those things, you have the potential to raise tens of millions of dollars like a lot of our students have and change your life and build wealth. That's what it's all about. It's not hard. It takes effort. And that's why most people don't have six-pack abs.
Yeah.
We all want them.
Yeah,
and I envy people that have them. Why? Because I know there's a lot of hard work in developing that body. You see, it's just the mindset and the mentality of putting your amateurish ways over here and saying it's time to man up, to flip the switch and to go pro. And then you just do it.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I wanted to pivot to, so we were talking a lot about raising capital, with investors, meeting people. It's very exciting. So on the other end of the spectrum is you need to have a product, right? Mm-hmm. Or you need to know people like Nico or myself or Brad who has the product. So how do you tell the potential guy who's either going to take your course or who's trying to get into the game of raising capital for investors to develop something that you have or to go out and meet people? Like how does someone navigate that?
Well, I mean, there's multiple approaches. We just onboarded a student the other day that has a fund, mm-hmm. and he raises money in his own fund, but then he partners with other operators. He's giving money to people that are in real estate as he does his due diligence and feels comfortable with them. And so he deploys capital as a fund of funds. Other people that are getting started, they don't know really how to underwrite a deal or how to evaluate a property. So they want to start raising capital and they become what we call a co-GP. So mm-hmm. they tell people, hey, I'm raising capital on this deal. It's not my deal, it's Brad Blazar's deal, and it's a 150 unit property in Florida or wherever. And so, you get access to my data room and all the information, and you can raise money on that deal. Now, you're going to hopefully get to a point where you want to be what we call an owner-operator. You're the guy, dude. It's your deal. You underwrote it. You're now raising capital. And now maybe other people are coming in and helping you raise capital alongside you. So there's different stages in growth as you go from single-family rental to multifamily or to another sector in the commercial space, whether it's storage or might be medical office, it might be whatever, but it's all about learning how to attract and raise that capital. And most people that go that direction, they start by raising capital, perhaps on other people's deals, becoming a co-GP, getting some income, and then being able to have the credibility of saying to people, look, I'm the co-GP on 350 units that we've raised $10 million for over the last 18 months. This deal, I am now the GP. It's now my own deal. Because by that point, you've got the experience, you've got the network, you've got the investors, and you can now probably raise, whatever it is you need, a couple $100,000 or $1 million to do your own deal, because the people that have invested through you trust you and probably now are more than willing to invest to help you do your first big deal. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah. So at some point on the show, I like to call this the mini mastermind, right? I would use you're the guy and you're gonna give advice, but then people can listen to it and also use it to their own, lives, right? So for example, in this scenario, so I have a company and, we've raised about $1 million over the course of 3-4 years. And then we have a small portfolio, $7-8 million in California. But then now I'm also playing the game of being the co-GP. I raised a couple $100 for Nico, and I'm also a co-GP in that 44 unit, right?
Yeah.
So in this scenario, what would be your advice? Because I'm listening to you speak, and I can tell you're on some other crazy level, like than me, right? It doesn't even make sense. Like I can't even understand it. So what would be your advice for someone like me or listeners listening to go from this level? Like what route would you take?
Well, I mean, the thing is, number one is you need to be intentional. You need to be in front of people. And really, you just need to ask for bigger checks. I tell people raising more money is not working harder, it's working smarter. So, when you're asking people to invest with you, start with a big number. Say, Vince, how much would you like to invest today? 100,000? 300,000 or $500,000. And they might be like, well, I can't invest that. Okay, well, how about 75,000? Oh, I can do that. Okay, great. Well, if your offering is priced where your minimum investment's 25,000, most people are so focused on that they overlook the fact the person could probably write a much bigger check than that. So it's always easy to scale down. But if I said, hey, Vince, how much would you like to invest in this today? 25,000, which is our unit size, or our share size, 50,000 or 75,000 or nothing, I missed the chance to potentially get $100,000 or $200,000 check out of that person that may have the wherewithal and the ability to do that. So realize you can always come down, but see, you can very rarely, if ever, go up. So that's just one trick I've learned over many years. The other is to eventually expand your network. There's family offices out there. Most people don't even know what a family office is. It's usually a person that was a business owner that had a very successful exit, that in life has had a major windfall, $50, $100 million fall in their lap. Now they're big time people. They can hire an attorney. They can hire a CPA. They can bring on an analyst. They can bring on a chief investment officer. Most of the guys in Shark Tank, because we know Kevin O'Leary and we know Kevin Harrington, they got family offices because why? They've invested in so many things. You think they can keep track of all that stuff themselves? No, they need a whole team of people that are getting the K1s and, analyzing the investments to screen them for Kevin to write checks and invest in. So a family office, when you learn how to get into them, is the next step, because why? They can write checks for $1 million, $5 million. Biggest check I've ever personally handled is $25 million. That's one check from one office. That's more than many people raise their entire lifetime. But I learned those skills as I've scaled up. I raised 50 million out of the state of Israel through a fund over there. They're called sovereign wealth funds. It's the wealth of the nation. So, you start learning on this journey as you raise capital. I'm picking up checks for 25, 50,000. Great. I raised a couple million, but how do I raise 25 million next year? Either talk to more people, ask for more money, or go to the next step, which is now start working with bigger investors, family offices, maybe get a local broker dealer or a local investment advisory firm that you build a relationship with, so that as they're meeting with clients of the firm, they're talking about you, your company, and your investment opportunity, and they're sending you money. And you're the recipient of all of that money that's coming your way. That's how you raise billions of dollars. You don't do it by yourself. You build networks and distribution for your deals, and they do all the work for you.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I have a couple of questions. The first one was, so let's say I am starting out and, I have little things and I'm, investments, and I'm partnering with my sister, my buddy's mom and stuff like that. But then I'm going after, like, let's say a little bit bigger dogs. And then you, on the other hand, are also doing the same thing. And you're offering 25% IRR. And I'm here with my 13% dying. So at that point, how do I compete with you? I can't compete with you. You've been in this game for much longer. Oil and business, you're doing great. So how do I do that?
That's really a myth. I tell people your age, your experience, your track record really doesn't matter much. It's really more about you, the emotional connection you have, because people invest emotionally. When people invest, they're doing it with their heart. It is an emotional decision. Now, after I write the check and I invest, I justify it up here logically. It's a good investment. It makes sense. But here's the thing I'll share with you. I can't tell you how many hundreds of millions I've raised where I know for a fact that person has not even read the offering document. They haven't even opened the covers of the private placement memorandum. And I know that to be true because what I've been able to do is introduce an investor to somebody that has a project or a deal. And in that meeting, that prospective investor will look at that other person and say, Vince, I'm going to be real honest. This is so outside the realm of anything I could ever see myself investing in. But you know what? I like you. And I can see that you and the team of people that you built around you are going to be wildly successful. So what are the next steps? How do I move forward with you? Well, what does that tell you? They're not investing in the deal. They just told you the deal is something that I normally would never invest in. I'm investing in you. or your team. So once you understand that concept that people invest emotionally because of that relationship, it really is a relationship-driven business we're in. You understand that it's more about you in building that trust than anything else. Now, of course, the structure of the deal, yeah, that's important. What you're investing in, to some degree, that's important. But I've seen people raise stuff that don't even make sense. You know, back in the 80s, people were throwing millions of dollars at what? Ostrich farms, emus. They were raising them for the feathers and the oils and I guess maybe the meat. And I'm like, this is insane. People are investing in ostrich farms. They were. I had a dude that raised $10 million to do a catfish farm here in West Texas. And I'm like catfish farming? He's like, yeah, dude, I sell the catfish to restaurants. Oh, I get it now. That's where you make the money. Yeah. And he raised $10 million. So you can raise money for about anything as long as logically it makes sense. But, you know, to get back to your question, what I would advise people is to understand two things. Slow down, build trust, build a connection and a relationship before you ask that person. And then the most important thing is once you build trust with an investor, once they see that you're executing on the strategy or that you're performing and that they're getting a check or you've gone full cycle, you need to go back to that well and get referrals. That's something that most capital raisers overlook. But again, they go about it the wrong way. They ask the person a yes or no question. Vince, do you know anybody that might want to invest with us? No, can't think of anybody. But if you ask a more open-end question, Vince, who are you connected with that I should also be talking to? You see, now it's a different conversation. Now his mind is like, oh, you know, my golfing buddy, Bill, he's an entrepreneur, or I got a friend, Steve, he just sold his business. He's sitting on some money. So the way you ask and the words you choose to use are very important, not just in raising capital, but really in any area of your life, right? As we all know, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. Mm-hmm. So, you know, when it's a referral introduction, your chances of now getting money are like almost 100%. Because now it's not you trying to build trust and convince somebody that you're a good person. Somebody else has already done that for you. And that person now, because of that third party relationship, looks at you very differently. They're like, well, geez, if Vince has already invested and he's doing well and he's seeing a return on his investment, I feel comfortable. I trust Vince. He's my best buddy. He's my friend. So it compresses the time horizon. But see, the problem is most people that are capital raisers, they don't even take that next step. It's unfortunate because that's the low-hanging fruit. That's the easy money.
And then the way that you make sense of investing passively with someone, with the investors, you do that by, how do you, you know, like you said, like, you know, the guy, you only need two things. You need balls and what was the other one you said?
Balls and money.
Balls and money, right? So that's one way, but do you use any other strategies to, you know, convince people like, hey, you know, if you're getting 0.001% in Chase, yeah, you should, you know, hand me the money. I'm going to give you 10%. Right?
Well, the thing that you need to do, I think, is sit back and have what I call your secret sauce. Let's face it, in real estate, there's plenty of other people out there doing multifamily. There's plenty of other people doing storage. So when I talk to an investor, I need to differentiate myself from everybody else that they might have talked to or are talking to so that they see Brad is the dude. That is the guy. He has something unique that sets him apart from every other multifamily person I've ever met. And here it is. When we look at a property, we run that property through a screening process and we call it our 5D framework. And if it doesn't pass and check the box on each one of those 5 things, we don't invest our money. We would never ask to invest yours. So here's how that works. This is what sets us apart from most other multifamily operators because it's a very disciplined approach and it's allowed us to do very well. The first is when I look at a piece of real estate, I look at the demographic affluence. I want to see the average household income within a 3-mile radius of that property at $120,000 or greater. Well, what does that tell me? It tells me I'm not dealing with bums. I'm dealing with people that can afford to pay my rent and I'm dealing in an area of town where most people are not going to have to get evicted. They're going to be able to pay in a timely manner because it is an affluent pocket of wealth. That's where I want my property located. The second D, we call that basically demarcation. And what that simply looks at is it on the right side of the railroad tracks? You know, can another property be built right down the road from us that would be a competing asset? Is the area going through gentrification? A lot of wealthier people coming into the neighborhood. So we look for those things. And also, is it easily accessible? You know, can you pull right off the main road and pull into the parking lot, or do you have to go down the freeway, you know, make a U-turn and come in? So we look at what we call demarcation. Another is desirability of the layout. You know, does it have elevator? If it's a multi-story property, 3 stairs, you know, it's pretty hard for an older person. But if it has an elevator, I have no problem selling a 3rd-story apartment to an 80-year-old because he can hop in the elevator and have to climb the stairs. So, you know, what we call desirability of the layout. Does it have ramps? And then the third also is basically what we call demand generators. Is the property located to something that creates demand for rentals, like a university, a major employer in town, a hospital system? That way I know that my property is always going to be in demand for rentals. Why? Because it's literally 2 miles down the road from a major employer or from the university. So those 5 Ds are a filtering process that allow me very quickly to look at a piece of real estate and say it passes, boom, let's underwrite it, or no, done hit it. Demographic affluence there is only 80,000. You see, and very quickly we run that filter. That's my secret sauce, but that's what sets my company, 5-Star Capital, apart from most other syndicators and most other operators. And my potential investor quickly realizes, wow, you've removed the emotional process. You're not buying real estate based on an emotional attachment. No, I don't care how beautiful or how nice the property is. If it doesn't hit those 5 things, I don't buy it. You see, the problem, which is one thing Warren Buffett talks about, Vince, is most people are emotionally attached to the stocks they own. They own Apple or they own Tesla. And as Tesla starts to go down in their mind, they're so attached to the company, and Elon Musk are like, oh, that stock will never go below 175. And so as it goes down, they continue to own it. And they wake up 3 days later and it's at 160. Oh, I just know it'll never get to 150. I'm not going to sell it. And then it gets to 145. And they're like so grieving. But that's because most people don't have discipline. And when you're investing, right, you need to have a disciplined approach to whatever it is you're doing, whether it's investing, whether it's raising capital. So I tell people, if this property over here is going to potentially pay 18% and you're at 14, but you have a secret sauce, you're disciplined, and you can communicate that, you have a much better chance of getting an investor to invest with you than perhaps with that other person. Even though that deal on paper might look better, it may not be better because there's no discipline. They haven't been able to communicate that as part of their story.
Yeah, that's a really good answer, man. I ask these questions to like the big dogs. I asked, do you know Neil Baba?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I know Neil very well. Mm-hmm.
So I asked him the same question too, and he had a similar response. He said that, like I might have more time to spend with the investors than Neil would, because he doesn't have time, right? So that's already like a thing that you can offer, right? So I can handhold more and stuff like that. My last question, Brad, is, so I come from a middle-class Indian family, right? I'm an immigrant from India, and I live in the US. I live in Orange County. So my purpose in life is to help people in middle class, right? That's like my thing. But what I'm learning while I'm going through this process is that lower middle class, upper middle class, wealthy people, my work becomes much, much easier the higher up I go in terms of raising capital. But my passion is still helping middle class, right? Yeah. So how do you navigate that? Most people just tell me, bro, the game is you got to move up. Like that's how you can buy bigger buildings. So do you have something to say in that?
Well, there's really 2 questions there as I kind of look at the question optically and realize kind of where you're going and what you want to try to achieve. Mm-hmm. Realize psychologists have proven that you are the average of the 5 to 7 people you spend most of your time with. That's just a reality of life.
Mm-hmm.
My life changed when I started getting on stages as a speaker, speaking alongside people like Floyd Mayweather, like Kevin Harrington, like, Grant's partner, Brandon Dawson, Jesse Itzler, all these big time people, Bobby Castro. And I started to think differently. I started to basically look at things differently. I started to realize, well, geez, if they can do it, they're no smarter or better than I am. And I just started being more intentional. And, here now we've created a phenomenal business where we make more in a day than some people make all year. And I share the stage all over the world and have students in 16 countries. But your question about the middle class or about people is you can't help people that don't want to help themselves. And let me just say that again, you cannot help people that do not want to help themselves. And as I onboard students into our coaching program, I'm very intentional to make sure they are committed. Why? Because a lot of people hire a coach and they fall off the bus. And then they have regrets. Well, geez, I just spent $20,000 hiring this dude and I haven't raised a dime, or I hired so-and-so, Todd Devereaux, to teach me how to invest in real estate, or I joined Sumrock's program and here we are 2 years and I haven't bought anything yet. Well, dude, you fell off the bus. Why? Because you weren't intentional. You weren't willing to do the work. The work is you show up on the weekly calls. The work is you join the Facebook group. You leverage the community. You take advantage of everything that person's built. So the one thing I learned is just a lot of people at where they are in life is you just can't help them because they don't want to help themselves. That's a given. Now, for those that do want to help themselves and benefit, then you got a huge opportunity, because now you can mold those people. You can work with those people. You can help bring those people up to your level, and then you can take them even further as you go from where you are to that next level. But the easiest way really to get better at anything is to do what I call level up. It's just to start associating with that next level. So, start hanging around with the Brad Sumrocks, the Rod Cleefs, the Neil Bawas, the Hunters, the Bridgers, the Brad Blazars, whatever, and start, attending events, but start basically thinking differently about what it is you can do. It's funny because this year when I was invited to speak in Florida, I said to my wife, I'm going to fly down to this event on a private jet, just like Grant goes to his events. And she looked at me like, are you stupid? Are you crazy? Do you have any idea what that's going to cost? I'm like, no, dude, but I'm going down there to speak along Jesse Itzler, and, Grant's going to be there. Brandon's going to be there. Hip hop recording artist, Rich the Kid's going to be there. I'm going to show up and show the world, man, Brad Blazar's #1 dude on raising capital. She's like, you have any idea what it costs? I'm like, no. So I got on the phone and I started calling charter companies, $35,000 to fly from Houston to Miami round trip.
Wow.
I said, done. Make the reservation. She's like, why don't you fly United? Go business first for like $1,800. You're spending $30,000. Who are you trying to impress in the world? I'm like, nobody. I just want the experience. Because once I do that, it'll activate something in me that will drive me to do it and maybe even eventually own my own jet. See, the experience of flying on your own private jet activates something inside you. I call it activates your prey drive. Man, it's like, man, I want to own this plane. It makes you hungry. And so what I realized after I booked the reservation is, well, guess what? This Citation 3's got 9 seats. Why don't I advertise the other 8 seats, $5,000 a seat? You get to go to the event. We'll be right in the front row. You get to fly down there with Brad Blazar. And in about 2 days, we sold out the other 8 seats. And I ended up flying for free. Now, it scared the shit out of me at first, but you see, I commit, and then the solution presented itself. When I did my big event last year and we hired Kevin Harrington, that was a pretty big speaking fee, and I hadn't even sold the ticket yet. But then I started thinking, well, I can get sponsors to come that will pay $10,000 to have their logo all over the event, have a table, and get time on stage. So, we start committing to much bigger things in life that initially scare us, because realistically, man, you got to get outside your comfort zone. To do big things in life, you got to get over the complacency. Most people are where they are because they're complacent and they're comfortable. They don't want to do the work to get to that next level. It takes work. I'll be honest, I busted my ass, but I'm at where I'm at because I made the decision to get over the complacency. Tony Robbins, in his first book, Snatty, I snapped in life, dude. I was basically washing my clothes in the bathtub, didn't have two nickels to rub together, was eating mac and cheese, and I was backed up to a wall. And that was the moment, man, I just said, man, I'm done. And it changed his life. You know, Tim Grover, who wrote the book Relentless, he's the coach to the top athletes in the world. He coaches the Kobes, the Michael Jordans, the A-Rods, the Tiger Woods. He said the only difference between them and everybody else that plays in the same sport is just up here. They just made the mental decision. I want to be better. So that requires me to show up earlier, work a little harder, and be more intentional. They're not born physically any better. It's just the mental attitude of being better. And that's really all it is. It's the mental attitude of upping your game, going to that next level, whether you're where you are and you want to get to the next level, or whether it's where that middle class is, Vince, that you want to work with. You got to convince them that they can do it by being that example. You be the example, you show them what they're capable of doing, and then you bring them up and say, hey, if I can do this, you can do it too. You know, I mean, I've raised billions, but I tell people, look, if I can do it and the hundreds of people I've trained can do it, you can do it too. The question is, do you want to do it? Some people are like, no, it's too hard. Don't want to do it. Great. Enjoy the life you have.
Great.
Pretty differently of you. I'm just like, you know, if you're happy and you can place it where you're at, fine. You got the skills and tools to create millions and amass wealth. But if you don't choose to do it, that's entirely up to you. You know, and here's something I'll leave as we kind of wrap up, because I know we're getting to the top of the hour. Ed Milet, who is a great speaker, and I love the guy to death, talks about this concept that he's on right now called One More Day.
Yeah.
And, you know, if you ever heard him speak, he said, look, at some point you will have the one more day, and eventually your life on earth will expire and you'll ascend and you'll be met at the pearly gates by God, and he'll take you by the hand and he'll walk you over and he'll introduce you to somebody. He'll say, Vince, this is the person I created you to be. This person was designed by me to be great, amass great fortune, transform the lives of other people, create legacy wealth that they could pass down for generations. And one of two things is going to happen. You're going to look at that person and extend your hand and say, man, I have been chasing you my entire life. And that person's going to shake your hand and say, congratulations, you've caught me. Or they're going to look at you like a deer in the headlights and say, man, I don't recognize you as the person you were designed to be. What's your name? The choice in life is your decision. And when I heard Ed Milet say that on stage, it just made me realize, man, we were all created in God's image, right? That's what the Bible says. Are you really living your life like God designed it to be lived? See, I think it's hypocritical when people that have kids drop them off at school and say, man, honey, go out and make it a great day today. Give it your all. And she looks back at you and says, Daddy, why aren't you giving it your all? That's a gut puncher, but that's reality. That's what 99% of the people on planet Earth do. They tell their kids to go out and have a great day, do whatever, and then they look back at you and they don't see you being the example that you should be. And so that motivates me, because I've got a daughter and I'm showing her, you know, all these big things in life, because I'm like Cardone, man. I want her to think big and realize that when she gets older, she can do what her dad has done or what she wants to do, rather than just fitting into society, really, which is what our educational system largely trains us to do. It trains us to do what? Get a job, get a career, get a retirement plan. And then 67% of the people in the workforce have one foot out the door as they're looking for another job, because they're discontent and they really don't enjoy what it is they're doing, but they got to do it. Why? Because they got to put food on the table. You don't have to do anything in life.
Yeah.
Nobody's the one that says go to work. I tell people that is a choice.
See, your daughter told her friends that you're famous, right? That's I love that story. I was like,
her little 11-year-old mind, when her friends say, what does your daddy do? She has no idea. She just says, I don't know. He's famous. He's been on TV. He's on TV shows, podcasts. He's, you know, in her little 11-year-old mind, that's what I am. And I, you know, I love it.
She's not wrong.
Yeah. I mean, I take her on the private jet and, you know, but I want to expand her mind and show her that in life, anything is possible. I mean, you know, when I started coaching, I, in my wildest dreams, never imagined people would basically pay me $40,000 for my time and for the knowledge I have to help change their life. That's more than a lot of people make all year. That's just one person. But, it's because I've been able to get where I am, and the testimonials and the credibility are there now to justify asking for that type of a check for the coaching and the level of service and the community and the resources that I'm able to provide people. But, when I started this 2 years ago, man, my own family were the biggest naysayers I had. Like, what do you know about being a coach? You ain't no Tony Robbins. You're not a certified life coach. And they try to talk me out of it. And I'm like, no, dude, I see myself on stage. I see myself building a business. I see myself as a best-selling author, and you just set it in motion and you show up every day. Here we are. We're bringing our 4th book out. Book number 4 is coming out early next year. And so, it's just moving forward. Same thing with raising capital, Vince. It's just taking one step every day and just never giving up. You burn the ships. And when people say, what's your plan B? There ain't no plan B. I'm totally focused and committed to my plan A.
I love that. Last question, Brad. I will let you go after this. So, on the same thoughts of as you were going, you cannot help people, you cannot be helped and all that stuff, right? Going along with it. So let's say somebody's listening and they want to be helped. They're middle class. They're like trying to make some small investments. They're putting money in stock. You got a couple of duplex, whatever, right? Now, for people like them, this includes me, to go to the next level, what I do is I go to meetups like Jake and Gino, and then I pay the extra and then hang out with Gino. And then he's on my podcast. I got a deal with his students, right? So how do people who haven't done that yet, or how do people get in a room with Brad Blazar or Grant Cardone, and how do they offer value? Because sometimes, there is no value they can offer you, right? Sure. Or maybe there is, I don't know.
Well, I think the majority of celebrity speakers, whether it's me, Grant, Brandon, whatever, we love getting on podcasts. I have no problem spending 30 minutes, an hour with somebody to share my knowledge with their community. So it's really, invite them to be on your podcast. Starting a podcast is a great thing for any entrepreneur because it builds credibility, it builds a sense of community, it gets listeners, but it also gets you introductions. I've been on some of the biggest podcasts in the world. Brad Lee, Dropping Bombs, right? Joel Brown, Addicted to Success, 100 million downloads. Roland Frazier, Business Lunch. But, get on podcasts. The other is when you go to these events, depending on the event, pay a little bit more to sit in the front. Get the VIP. There is definitely power in proximity to other people. If you're in the front row, who do you think you're sitting with? You're sitting with all the other business owners that probably are doing a lot better than you. And you start networking, you start to talk to them, you find out like, hey, here's my card. And you're right there. In the front row or in the first couple rows, that's where the magic happens. Don't be in the nosebleed section. And then the last really is to, just realize that everybody is approachable in life. And what I have found is that people that have what I call altitude over you, meaning they're at a place in life that you want to be, man, they're so humble, they're so approachable, and really they want to help you. Through LinkedIn, man, I reached out to a dude. And the dude happens to be Beyonce's dad, Matthew Knowles, CEO of Music World Entertainment. He was the founder of the company, handled the careers of people like Chaka Khan, Kool and the Gang. Of course, his beautiful daughter, Bebe, who's married to Kanye. And, the guy responded back. I'm like, holy crap, dude. And as we built a relationship, we had lunch right here in Houston, Texas. And, he spoke at my virtual events multiple times. But my question for that one relationship is, who do you think Matthew Knowles is connected to globally that he can connect me? Matt, I want your daughter to entertain my guest at my event. You think we can make that happen? Yeah, I'll call Beyonce. We'll see if we can make that happen. I don't know what it's going to cost. Or, hey, man, I'd love to get connected to Kool and have his band perform. But, he knows everybody. And, the funny thing is one of my students in COVID, her business was seriously impacted. And within 3 weeks, her client list was Sheryl Crow, Winona Judd, Asleep at the Wheel, Citizen Cope, all these major musical artists, because I introduced her to Matt Knowles when none of these big musical acts could go on tour. And we sold tickets through her platform, and they did virtual streaming events to their fan base. True story. So again, one connection away. One person can change your life. And that's the power of listening to the podcast, showing up at the events, reading the books, You know, it's those things. And if you can't afford to sit in the front row, you know, buy the dude's book. And when they're up there, just run up and say, hey, man, I got your book. And they're going to sign it, right? And shake their hand, take your picture. When you post a picture of you alongside a celebrity, what do you think it does for your social status? You become a person of interest. People are like, well, who is this dude, Vince? I see him with Grant. I see him over here with this dude. I see him with Brad Blazar. And they start following you. And based on that following, as you become more successful, you're able to raise a lot more money.
That's awesome, man. I'm trying to get GC on here, man. Say hi for him.
Yeah.
For me.
He's a tough one, man. You know, you got to work the magic. You start off with the Brad Lees and the Coach Michael Burt's, and, you know, they all know, of course, Grant. And, you know, if you can finally get Brandon, who's his partner, you got a much better chance. And so, you know, but Grant's just, you know, he's one of those guys that he's very selective. Why? Because he can be. Yeah,
man, he's like one of my idols, you know, because I followed him. He comes from nothing too. So
yeah.
Hey,
exactly.
hey, if my listeners want to reach out to you, Brad, I know you have a course. Can you tell a little bit so people can be interested in that too? You know.
We have, you know, different levels of service. So, I mean, we have a turnkey level. If you want to launch a fund, I got 2 securities attorneys. We'll handle everything turnkey, do your PPM, do your pitch decks, do a great job. We'll make you look a lot better than you are. I mean, literally, we'll position you as a multi-million-dollar brand. You'll be right up there, and you'll have no problem with the work we do to raise capital. But it's real simple, man. You know, on social media, on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, it's just, you know, bradblazar.com. Go to our website. It's Blazar. There are no E's in the spelling of my first or last name. A lot of people think it's like a Chevy 4-wheel drive. No, it's Blazar. But, you know, just shoot me a DM. You know, send me an email. Real approachable. I got a team of people. We'll probably get back to you within 24 hours. And would love to talk to you about what it's like to be part of our tribe, what it's like to come to one of my boot camps, what it's like to learn how to attract and raise capital. We got all different levels. I guarantee something is affordable to your pocketbook. And, you know, we're just here to add value. And really, like I said very early in the podcast, it's help people get to that next level of life where they don't have to exchange their time for money.
Yeah. Thank you, Brad. Thank you for your time, Brad.
You're very welcome, man. It's been great. You've been a wonderful host, Vince.